President Trump has always been clear that he wants to crack down on illegal immigration. But are his administration's actions going beyond what he promised? So let me play this for you. This is what President-elect Trump told NBC's Kristen Welker. This is right before the start of the second term.
I just want to make sure I'm clear, which is that you're saying, yes, you're going to focus on the people with criminal histories, but everyone who's here illegally has to go.
I'm saying this. We have to get the criminals out of our country.
One of Donald Trump's first executive orders promised a crackdown on illegal immigrants and criminals, specifically anyone threatening the safety or security of the American people. But those are not the only people being targeted now that the promise is policy. There are also people like Carol Mayorga. She's a mother of three who's lived in rural Missouri for almost 20 years. And according to NPR's St. Louis station, Mayorga was arrested and shackled when she tried to renew her employment authorization document. A customer at the breakfast joint where she works, that person every day told the station this about her arrest and possible deportation. 95% of the people here support Donald Trump. I do too, but this is wrong. There's also the case of Dylan. He's 20 years old, from Venezuela, no criminal record, according to a teachers union. He was detained in New York after a judge dismissed his immigration proceedings. Protests have since broken out over his arrest. Those are just two of the cases that surfaced this week alone, and now their communities are rallying around them. They're protesting. They're holding fundraisers for legal fees. Neighbors are speaking out as character witnesses, even if they voted for the very administration carrying out these efforts. A similar story has been playing out in a small town in Georgia. 19-year-old Ximena Arias Cristobal was wrongfully pulled over in Dalton earlier this month. Now, Dalton Police admit the arrest was a mistake. She was detained for 2.5 weeks by federal authorities. Ximena is now out of ICE detention. In her corner has been a Republican state lawmaker, Representative Kasey Carpenter. He wrote a letter advocating for her release, calling her a person of high moral character. And he has launched a petition asking Congress to overhaul the immigration system. The state representative Kasey Carpenter and Ximena Arias Cristobal are both with me now. Thank you for being here. And Representative Carpenter, let me start with you. What is it about Ximena's story that compelled you to write this statement as a character witness and do more than at the very least stay silent?
The reality is that's not the first letter that I've had to write. I live in a very diverse community, and unfortunately, we've had a lot of folks that have been detained for ICE. Ximena struck a chord among our community, got a huge outpouring of support. But for me personally, you know, we have friends that know each other. We attend the same church. We attended the same high school. She goes to Dalton State. Just a great, great kid with a bright, bright future. And I thought it was an easy letter to write to support this young lady.
Ximena, did you expect at the start of the administration that you would have to be on heightened alert, considering the characterization of what the president said would be his priority, those who threaten safety of communities?
Did not think so. It never crossed my mind, since he did say he was going to get all the criminals, and I didn't fall into that category.
You've been released from ICE detention, but you could still be deported. You left Mexico when you were how old?
4 years old.
And do you have any connection to Mexico, or know what would happen or where you'd go if you were deported?
Absolutely not. I know I have family in Mexico, but I don't really know them. So it would be very hard to go to Mexico and start fresh.
Yeah. Representative Carpenter, there are Republican members of Congress who are saying the Venezuelans in Florida who have temporary protected status, and really across the country, as some of these people who've come here during the Biden administration, that they are law-abiding, that they are members of the community, and they don't fit the profile of the promise from the president. Why is this now spreading to raids of restaurants, arresting college students? Why do you think that has become part of the priority for the administration?
I don't know that it's necessarily a priority of the administration. I think, unfortunately, if you don't clarify with law enforcement who they're supposed to detain, they have to detain everybody. Yeah. In the state of Georgia, if you get caught jaywalking and you don't have legal status, they have to detain you. We have to develop a system that says, these people are really a danger to society. Detain these people. There's not enough funds to run all these people out of the country. So let's focus on it's like triage, right? A guy comes in with a headache, you don't address him. The guy that's bleeding, that's been shot, that's the guy you address. Same with immigration. We have to focus on the people that are danger to society and to Americans.
I went back and read the roll call of the vote for the Georgia Criminal Alien Track and Report Act last year, which requires local law enforcement to cooperate with ICE and transfer undocumented immigrants. You were the only Republican in the legislature, House or Senate, to vote against it. Considering what we've seen, if it were to come up for a vote again today, you think you'd be alone in the legislature as the only Republican?
I hope not. That bill kind of got fast-tracked after the horrific incident in Athens with Lake and Riley, and it got fast-tracked through the legislature. I think if people would sit back now and see what the consequences are, because I've had calls from my colleagues across the state that have experienced what I've experienced. Kids that are leaving graduation that are in a fender bender, and then they get detained and miss graduation. Good kids, good families. And so I would hope they would at least take a pause and say, let's change the language of this legislation and let's focus on hardened criminals, because nobody wants criminals here. I think that 90% of Americans don't want that. But I think the majority of Americans would appreciate a pathway for people that have been here and not committed crimes for 20 years.
Ximena, I read that you said, despite you not being violent or one of the criminals that the president said that he would prioritize, when you were in custody, you felt like you were being treated like one of the worst criminals ever. How so?
At the detention center, you're deprived of a lot of your human rights. And so it makes you feel like you're a criminal. In a detention center, it's not supposed to be a place where you're treated like a criminal. It's to detain you till you figure out your legal status, but instead you're treated as if you were in a prison.
How is life for you now?
It's difficult, having to go by my everyday life. It's changed a lot, and I can't go back to my regular life.
And Representative Carpenter, what are you asking for from Washington, from the administration, but also from Congress?
Sure, just get off their duff, right? I mean, we've been dealing with this issue for 40, 50 years. Reagan did a lot back in his day, but then they didn't secure the borders. And I think you have to attack it, four-pronged approach. You have to secure the border. You have to get rid of the bad guys. You need to give people a pathway that have been here for 20 plus years. And then you also need to speed up the process for others to come in the country. Private industry needs employees. If we're going to have tariffs that bring business back to the United States, we're going to need workers. So we need an efficient system for visas, et cetera. If you do all that at once, a nice across-the-board approach, then you have a solution. But just spot picking, depending on who's in power, is dangerous, and these people become volleyballs.
But you acknowledge it in this climate especially, that is, I hate to say never, but it's highly, highly unlikely that a legislation like that's going to get through Congress and to the president.
I don't know. The president has been open about, making DACA permanent and extending it to people, adding years to it. He talked about that in his first term. There was a bill on the table, and Pelosi wouldn't allow it to go through House because it had funding for the wall. So if everybody can get rid of who's going to win and who's going to lose on issues and allow everybody to get a win, I think the American people would appreciate it.
Representative Carpenter and Ximena Arias